doing it. Okay, it's recording. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back inside the virtual barber shop. As always, this is the Beards podcast, the hairiest podcast on the internet. We are the Beards. We are the SWF reigning tag team champions, and well, soon to be, we hope, the Kapow tag team champions. But we're going to get into a little bit of the news about that soon. But this is season 4, episode 4, and we are going to get right into it. As always, me, Carl Atlas, keyboard warrior, joined by the mighty Mad Dog. So, man, let's keep it. Let's keep the normal format. Let's do a little bit of fat to fit. I'll start. So this week has been rough, man. I'll be honest. And last week as well. Actually, I've had 2 bad weeks. I was feeling fatigue from my normal day job, I think, and the heat and the lack of sleep, and in my ongoing issues with my lower back, which were just at their peak last week. And that led me to be feeling quite ill, actually physically, having to be sick. And I think I kind of looked at that and I was like, right, this is my body telling me to ease off. I've been working so hard trying to get into some sort of shape ready for the shows to return. And I think I pushed myself maybe a tad too hard. I'm also, having to swallow that bitter pill of I'm not a 20-something-year-old invincible person anymore. Things are going to start catching up to me now. So I've really got to start looking after myself. But I started feeling sorry for myself because I wasn't able to get in the gym. I was going down to Rishi's. I was thinking, well, if I lay off the gym, then I can still do the wrestle fit sessions and maybe a wrestle skills session or 2, just to kind of keep moving, hit the ropes, bump around a little bit. And that was just tiding me over. And I was starting to feel a little bit better. And I hit the gym tonight. And I'm going to be honest, since I've come home, I felt it in my back. And I didn't even do a back workout. I was just kind of doing my usual stuff, upper body stuff, and then a bit of cardio. But I'm now sat here like, I can feel that more than I could before. So I've really got to be careful. I have booked myself in for some chiropractor sessions, and I've inquired about acupuncture as well. So I'm going to start, looking into how to sort myself out and look after myself. Because from a mental standpoint, I really don't want to lose the momentum that I built up and the gains. I didn't want to lose the gains. So yeah, I'm keen to kind of sort myself out, get back in there regularly. I'm going to keep going to the gym. I'm just going to adjust. I'm going to, go for some lighter weights, more reps, that sort of thing.
It's easy to get your confidence bashed, and it's easy to get worried about, like, oh, if I do this, is it going to hurt? And if it hurts, will I then be able to train? And you've got to be mindful of that, especially if you're carrying injuries. But like, you need to work around it. You need to be careful, but you also need to strengthen it. You need to make sure that you don't completely avoid it. Obviously, please don't hurt yourself or injure yourself when you're working out or what have you. But don't completely avoid it. Like, part of what you've got to do is make sure you strengthen it. Get some actual advice from chiropractor or even a physio. There's a good guy down in Pompey. There's some good physios around. Get a physio, because hopefully, that might show you where maybe you've got some tenseness. Often with your back, you might be carrying tenseness elsewhere, and it's just translating into pain somewhere lower in your back. But it could be that you've got neck. With the stuff that we do, especially stuff that you do, it could be something in your neck. It could be in your shoulders. And obviously, the way you walk, the way you carry yourself, that could translate to lower back pain because of the way in which it could be something in your pelvis or your hips.
It's funny because I now have a theory of what the origin of this is. Do you remember I did the moonsault? This is way back now. This is Kapow and Cal Plain, and I did the moonsault to the outside onto like 8 people, and only one guy caught me. Yeah. Famously told that story a few times, and I sort of landed on his shoulder and slipped off and landed right arse cheek first on the floor, and there was a hell of the bruise engulfed my entire right buttock. Yeah. I think I did some damage down there, which, like as you say, is traveling up. Maybe it's a sciatic type thing, I don't know. But I've noticed now that I not only can I feel it in my lower back, I can feel it on the right side of my hip. And it may well be that it's, like I said, it's one of those things. It's coming back to haunt me. Like maybe I had that bruise, I didn't look after it, or I was hobbling around for too long. You know, and it's like you say, it's incremental and gradual, isn't it? And it's just something is now twanged in me where I'm not as rubbery
Are you
as
stretching your piriformis? Are you getting your piriformis stretches in?
I still do a lot of my DDP yoga stuff, especially on that area. Anytime I'm about to get in the ring at Rishi's, I make sure that I'm early, like 5 minutes, so I can get in and have a good stretch. You know, I think it's called pigeon pose in yoga. It's one of my favorites, and I really work on that muscle. So yeah, I know I'm doing all of that. But yeah, I can't lie, I'm suffering a little bit. But you know, I'm going to keep going. As I said, I'm just going to adjust, push a bit lighter, go for more reps, work on that area, get myself seen into, and get it sorted out. But yeah, I can't. You know, I can't
to shift it. It doesn't hurt to change things every now and then. You know, you've been hitting it full tilt for a while. It doesn't hurt to, like, a change can be as good as a rest. You know, so. Yeah. Approaching it a little bit differently, spotlighting different muscle areas, you know, that can be really good for you. We've been doing a lot of strength stuff as well. Obviously, when you and I have been getting together to train, we've been doing lots of strength stuff and pushing the weights up. But it never hurts to kind of move away from that level of intensity. You can still be intense, just move away from the high weight intensity and move into some other areas. So, So my week, I've just basically been, it's a normal week for me. I've been 2 weeks now, like really tuned in to my diet, like really, really dialed in, just focused and grumpy and moody because I'm eating like 200 grams of carbs a day. So yeah, and it's always bought the same boring white rice. But, you know, like C.T. Fletcher says, just shut the fuck up and eat it. Like, it's just food. It fuels what you do. You have to. There's a thing about food that's so hard, especially for people like myself and like yourself, because you get an attachment to food that's got nothing to do with fuel. You get emotional attachments to food. You get stress attachments to food, comfort attachments to food, and whether that's caffeine or sugar or carbohydrates or just the feeling of being full or just the feeling of eating. You know, there's a certain primal thing about the comfort of eating, of making yourself feel better because you're eating, which is very primal, right? Because when you eat, you're surviving. It's the you know, there's two things that we have to do as primates, right? And both of them feel nice. One is eat, and the other is to have sex, right? And because ultimately we're primates, right? We might think we're elevated, and we might think we're cognizant and clever, right? We might be very smart apes, but we are just primates ultimately, right? So there's a certain attachment that can biologically and emotionally that comes with eating, but at the same time, like anything, that can become unhealthy. And you know, you don't become roly-poly like you and I because you have a healthy attitude towards food, right? Like it doesn't happen by accident. You know, we eat too much or we eat the wrong things, and it wasn't like for one day. I've been eating the wrong amounts of the wrong things for a very long time, and I know better than most because I know what I should be eating most of the time, and ultimately you choose not to, and that's the last 2 weeks I've chosen to be really strict on it, but it's hard being in a calorific deficit, you know, because you're just constantly grumpy, and you want to go and eat a Mars bar or a loaf of bread, and you just can't. So yeah, that's been tough this week. I've been back in the gym. I never leave the gym. I don't know why I say I've been back in the gym. I'm always in the gym. There's no back in it at all. I've been in the gym all this week. It's been going really well. Yeah, it was a weird week in the gym, actually, because it started off this week really muggy and hot. Yeah. And I literally, all I had to do was look at the weights and I started sweating. And then this evening, it was really cool. I had the garage door open. There's a strong breeze. And you can't associate, like, people think that sweating means gains and means losing weight. Sweating is just perspiration. It's just urea and water leaving your body, right? You don't lose more weight when you sweat. Like, it's a myth, right? You might lose more weight because you're working hard. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you have to work. Yeah. You have to work hard to perspire. That will cause you to lose weight, but perspiring doesn't help you lose weight. Not unless you're like on the final moments of your cut and you're dehydrating down to get, you know, to 3 or 4%. And you know, I'm at 30 odd %. So we're, you know, but my point is, it was nice last night and tonight working out. It was really nice because I wasn't like you know, like you've trained me in the gym when it's hot. I'm not dripping all over the bench, and sometimes it's like wiping down a swimming pool after I've laid on a bench. So yeah, no, it was good. I really, you know, it's been a good week from that point of view, and my back's been okay. I've had a couple of little twinges, but I've been I think for me, the thing with me and my back is I know it's good when I don't wake up and think about it. When I can put my socks on, I put my socks and shoes on, and then I think, oh, that, you know, I don't think. I know it's bad when I've got to prep myself for socks. I've got to build myself, you know, when I've got to psych myself up to get my shoes and socks on, or put my pants on, and I'm like putting one leg in, and I'm holding the side of the wall, and then I'm right now I'll get the other leg in. Like, that's when it's really bad. I'm at the other side of it now, where it's like, oh, that didn't hurt. And hopefully in a couple of weeks I won't think about it at all. But much like yourself, I think I'm going to book myself in maybe with a physio or something, because I think what I want to do is start working out what the triggers are, what's causing it to become tight, and then hopefully when it starts, maybe speak to a physio about how to do some exercises or some stretches, or how to, you know, head it off at the pass.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good idea. And you know, it's like it's just it's age, man. It's just catching up to us. Like we, you know, even your style of wrestling, you know, you're moving around a lot more than the big guys of old. You know, you're expected to do more. You're expected to be lighter on your feet and move and bump and all the rest of it. It's not like, you know, you can stand in the middle of the ring and pretend to be the unknockable mountain. People expect more now. So yeah, and that is going to catch up to everyone eventually.
And we expect more of ourselves. We expect more of ourselves, right? We want to do more.
Yeah, and
disappointed when that's our match.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. On that note,
go on.
I am looking forward to tomorrow.
For us, bittersweet though, bro.
It is bittersweet.
I've been a bit sad. I've actually genuinely been a bit depressed not depressed, the wrong word, just a bit blue about it. You know, I was really looking forward to this Saturday.
Well, let's clue the listeners in, because basically we were set, as I said in the intro, to face off against the Bombay Bad Boys for their Kapow titles.
Or for our SWF, you know, or for our SWF titles. Yeah. So it's going to unify the belts.
It was to unify the belts. And obviously, you know, me and Mad Dog were gunning for those belts, like, you know, hardcore.
We always have been. We are the effing champs. We are,
right.
Because the Kapow, and the thing that a lot of people don't understand, the Kapow championship belts, the tag team belts, they mean a lot to us. And that might sound really weird, but we really pioneered the Kapow tag team division back when there really wasn't one. And we worked really hard to create a bit of a scene around the tag team scene. And, you know, and then our moment was gone. We didn't get our moment. So it's something that me personally, I really want to, you know, I did it. I worked hard. I yelled and screamed, "We are the effing champ."
Yeah. But that match is now no longer taking place because one of the participants, the opponents, got pinged. Got the NHS app pinged, say that he had been in close contact with someone. You know, he did the test. He's negative, but obviously he's doing the right thing and he's isolating, which takes him out of the run.
Right things. I've seen him on his socials. Like, he hasn't been doing classes, and you know, he's been doing all the right things.
Yeah. He's following the guidelines, and but that does mean he's out. And so there was a last minute rework, and then I think there was another last minute rework because another one of the lads
actually got it. Jakey's got it.
Actually ended up catching corona. So yeah, still, you know, be careful out there, people. So yeah,
he's okay, by the way. He's okay.
These things happen.
Like, we've spoken to him. He's okay. Like, he's got a bit of a mild cold, but his test came back positive. But he's young and fit and healthy, so he's okay.
Yeah, which is good news, certainly. But you know, like I said, this stuff happens. Even without corona, you know, there are occasions where you know, a car breaks down on the road, or someone gets sick at the last minute, or injured, or whatever, and things happen and things change. And that's the nature of wrestling. But this one was particularly gutting, as I said, because I think we hyped ourselves up. You know, we were going to have a barn burner no matter what. You know, we were both hoping that we were going to come away with double gold. But, you know, it's been postponed. It will happen. And instead, you are defending your heavyweight singles belt.
That's right.
Crusher Curtis. And I am going to be facing an old rival, Hitman for Hire. So we're both in singles action, which is a good test because although we've both had a singles and a tag, I think we both know that we want to go and have another singles and just focus on the singles and see, to improve on what happened at the Groundlings. But yeah, so
I wasn't happy with my match. Like, obviously, like the end of my match did not go the way I was hoping it would.
And I certainly, I was a little bit deflated about mine as well. So it's a chance at redemption for both of us to have the kind of singles match that we could both like to have independently and respectively of each other. But I am still.
And you've got Will, so you are gonna have a great match because Will is so solid. He's a great hand. I put him up in my socials. I said, like, he is one of the most underrated guys out there, that, like, by anyone's stretch of the imagination. But he's a cheap, nasty, conniving little so-and-so heel, and I still love beating him up. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And like you say, it'll be a good one. Lots of things to look forward to, and what we're going to try and, I proposed this in the preamble. We like to have a recording preamble. I proposed this to Mad Dog that if this episode runs a little bit short, then maybe what we do is we top it up with some on the road stuff tomorrow. However, we might also end up getting there tomorrow and recording so much that it becomes its own episode. So we're not going to say what's going to happen, but at some point you're going to see a little bit of on the road stuff with Atlas and Mad Dog. We'll definitely make that happen. So yeah, look out for that in the future. Yeah, man. So it's at Oasis Academy Mayfield, which weirdly enough is one of my old schools that I used to work in a long time ago. And I'm not sure when I'm going to get this out. I'm going to try and get this out tomorrow morning. So I'm not sure we're going to get anyone flooding to the box office off the back of the podcast, but it will be. But I think the video footage is going to go up at some point, because I know that Kapow and SWF want to do more releases of video footage. I know we're going to have a whole bunch of different cameras and angles and what have you. So yeah.
Yeah, well, when that comes about, we'll definitely announce that. So. Talking about, I thought I could just share a nice little road story about things changing on the fly last minute.
Yeah.
And I the trouble is that people come up to me and go, "Oh, do you remember this?" And I'm like, "Nope." A lot of stuff happens.
Because you've been hit on the head a lot.
I do get hit on the head a lot, and a lot of stuff happens, and I do forget people's faces and names and certain matches. Someone posted Premier Wrestling results on some group today. I think it was today, and a match came up, and I was like, I do not remember being in that match. The results were there, and it was me and Rishi against Johnny Storm and James Kenner. What a tag! What a weird tag that is. But I don't remember doing it. I do not remember doing it. I don't remember anything that happened in it. I got to work, Johnny Storm, and I don't remember it. And I know that sounds awful, like it's a terrible review of Johnny. It's not. It's just it happened so long ago, and I cannot retain things like that. However, I do remember a little story about the camps and having to change things on the fly. If people have ever been to a campsite show, wrestling show, or wrestlers that are listening to this have worked campsite shows, they will know and understand that there's normally some sort of formula. It will be singles, and then a tag or some sort of rumble or something, some sort of schmozzy ending. There's normally 3 matches or 4 matches if you're lucky. They tend to follow that pattern. Not all, but some. So there's the crew, and we're in the van and we're going off, and I think it was on the Isle of Wight, and we did a 2 shot. And I remember getting the Butlins or Pontins or whatever the place was, breakfast. And I was hungry, man. So I filled up on breakfast because I knew it was probably going to be my only meal that day. Filled up on breakfast, but it was like buffet breakfast. You help yourself.
Yeah.
Straight away, that's a red flag.
Yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried now because no good wrestling story starts with I hit the buffet in the morning. So I'm already worried.
Yeah, I think you've probably heard this story as well. And I did my first match okay. I can't remember what the time span was. If it was on the same day or if it was the next day after breakfast
It
game.
could be either, right? On the camps, it could have been either.
It could have been either. But I was feeling ropey. I was feeling a bit ropey. And I got through the singles absolutely fine. And then it was, and I was on first. And so I was listening to the second match and my gut started gurgling. And I'm like, oh, man. But where we were was behind the stage. There was no toilet. You had to run past the audience to get to the only toilet, right?
Right.
So I can't, you know, kayfabe and all the rest of it. You can't just, you know, come flying through in your gear.
Yeah.
So the match ends. There's a little bit of a pause, a little bit of a 5 minute, 10 minute buffer between singles matches ending and the tag match starting. And we're working it out, and I'm going greener and greener and greener. And I'm telling you, man, the Wolves were at the gate. The Wolves were at the gate. And I was like, I think if I can just get through this with like not bumping, because I honestly thought if I bump, it's going to be like someone standing on a tube of toothpaste. But then I had to call an audible on the fly, mind. I was like, I can't go out with you lads. I can't. If I go out, I'm gonna evacuate. I'm gonna evacuate. It's gonna happen. So poor Brad Slayer, bless him, goes out on his own for this tag match,
Right.
does a handicap match, and I'm there rolling backstage like, oh God, just get the match over so I can go to the bog. And I think I managed to flag someone down. And I was like, right, I'm going to do. I've got 1 minute. Well, I've got 1 minute in me, so I ran out, and I was like, I'm going to do a run in. I hit one of the heels with a DDT out of nowhere, rolled backstage. Brad managed to get the roll up on the other guy. All made perfect sense. It was beautiful. And then the second the match was over, I was out. I was through the curtain, into the box, to be joined by Brad Slayer, who had a slightly delayed reaction to the food, but who also indulged in the buffet. And he joined me in the cubicle next to me, and it was like some musical trumpet thing going off. But like literally, you know, that's one example. That there's been thousands of examples of guys phoning up, I'm stuck on the road or whatever.
Yeah, well, it happens, doesn't it? You get stuck, and then you arrive. So it happens to everyone. Like, so you get stuck on the road. I remember this happened going into London once. We got stuck on the road, and like we're in London, but you can't fucking you can't detour. The traffic's the traffic, right? So we phoned ahead, and they've had to shift. Not only do the matches that you've missed have to change, but when you arrive, your match is now different. So you rock up and they're like, right, get changed. You've got 5 minutes and you're now with so-and-so. And I would say this about the training, you know, I trained down at the Rev Pro Academies of wrestling, and we actually drilled that. You know, that was something that Andy Quilden and Andy Simmons, they trained us in doing that. Like, we would be doing blow-up drills, or we'd be doing drills or doing spots, what have you. And they would just come over and take two people and say, you got 10 minutes. We want to see something. Has it got to be? We want to see fight. You got 10 minutes to put 5 minutes together, and you go away and you start chatting. You'd be like, oh, and when you first started doing that, you'd come in and you'd just stand there and look at them and be like, go on, then go on, and you're like, we don't know what we're doing, but it's really, you know, after a couple of times, you're like, all right, okay, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll go home, and you know, you get into that. Like, I think you said this last week, didn't you, about it's that exercise, it's that brain activity that you just have to work, you have to exercise it, you have to keep doing it so that it becomes easy. So when someone says, what we're going to do, you're like, oh yeah, we'll do this and this.
I want to circle back to that in a minute, but you talking about, you know, drilling that sort of thing at training. I've done something similar, but it was inspired by, I went to Danny Collins for like a training camp, like a weekend camp. And
I remember you went up and stayed, didn't you?
That's right. And he introduced me to the idea of what he called safety spots,
right?
Which was the idea that at some point in your career, if you have a long enough career, you're going to get in there with a guy who doesn't know what he's doing, or you're going to get into a situation where you haven't had time to plan. And so you need to be able to create movement and excitement without necessarily having the other guy cooperate. And so he showed us a series of moves that you can do safely pretty much with you doing all of the work, all of the lifting, nothing, like, you know, no cooperation from the other guy whatsoever. And that got my brain thinking, because obviously we were doing Kapow training camps as well over in Horsham at the time, and I used to write down little scenarios on cards. I remember having printed out cards or hand drawn cards or whatever, and so it would have you know, it would have a different time, a different finish, and a different kind of scenario or spanner in the works, you know, just to get them thinking. Like, you know, it would be something like, oh, you know, the guy's injured his left leg, you can't work the left, you know, right. Something like that, just
you're
to kind of,
you're in the heat and you've got lost, you've forgotten the hopes, or you're
something like that. It was something like, you know, so they all had different times. Some of them had like 7 minutes, some of them had 3, to really get them to think about how they're going to get this across in 3 minutes. But yeah, I think you're right, that kind of mental aspect of it doesn't get, or it does get done a lot now, but it wasn't when you and I were coming up, or certainly when I was coming up, it wasn't as prevalent as it is now.
No, but I think training, when we first started coming up, I came up through the Rev Pro. When I eventually came up through the Rev Pro Academy. But that isn't where I started. I started, well, you know this because that's how you and I met. I started years and years and years before that, doing it the old-fashioned way, just rocking up to shows, saying, "Can we help with?" We literally, me and Kev, did it the old-fashioned way. We rocked up to any show that was within, you know, the amount of fuel we had in the car, and we asked, "Can we help with the ring? Can you bump us around? Can we help with ring down? Where are you going to be to, you know, got on a couple of camps that way, and someone likes you, so they throw you around the ring a little bit and knock the rust off while chucking you about, and you pick things up." But yeah, like, you know, you learn that. I think that was the old way, that you learn on the job. So it just happened to you. Like you said, you got picked up, you went on the camp, and someone said, "Oh, we're going to be half an hour late. You best get changed in the back of the van on the way there, and we best throw this ring together really fast." You had. Whereas now, I think there's so many training schools. Every promotion has a training school now, that you have the ability for that trainer to say, "When I was a trainer, you know, when I was coming through, we had to put matches together on the fly. So let's practice that." You know,
it's funny, isn't it? Because I've certainly experienced this, and I don't know if you have, but there seems to be almost like with some of the old schoolers, it's frowned upon to call stuff backstage. Sure. You know, I've been in there with some legends, some old guys, and I'll be like, "Right, what are we doing?" And they'll be like, "Why do you want to know, kid? Like, I'll see you out." And I know you've had that experience with someone, you know, who's considered an old schooler. You know, "I'll see you out there, kid." And it's that kind of like, oh, if you can't do it on the fly, then you can't work. Yeah. And I think there's an element of, you need to be able to do it on the fly for all of the reasons that we've just listed, all those kind of like life will throw you a curveball sometimes scenarios. But the style of wrestling that happens now cannot be called entirely on the fly.
It's too dangerous. You can't call some of the sequences on the run. You have to know what they are.
Yeah. If you're having a televised match, you know, for one of the big promotions, or if you're even doing like a online pay-per-view or something against someone, you know, fairly well known, and you know that the stakes are high, there's no way you're saying to that guy, "I see you out there," unless you are the best in the world. But even then, the WWE guys have got road agents. They come and actually have a third party come and talk to them about
several third parties that put their input in, and I'm sure they still get their head together, and often they will work a match on the road. You know, often when you look at pay-per-view matches, they might have done that match 4 or 5 times in dark matches, or at least something like that match, or pieces of that match. And also, it's not like these people, the guys on television doing pay-per-views haven't been doing it for 10 minutes. You know what I mean? They've been doing, it's their entire job. It's all they do Monday through Thursday, or Monday through Saturday, whatever their schedule is. It's all they do. So it's different when it's all you do, right? It's like my day job is very easy to me. Your day job is really easy to you, right? But if you had to explain it to someone else, they'd be like, "That's a lot of work." And you think, well, it might be, but I do it every day, so it doesn't feel like it. So it's the same thing for them. But if calling it before the match was any less professional, then the guys who are the best in the world wouldn't be calling it before they. Do you know? I've always. Well, that's always great. It's always great with me when you're thinking. I've stood there and I've watched. You know, I've been in your call on the crew, watching the likes of. You know, I think everyone would call him Finn Balor now, but you know, Devitt or Ricochet or Tanahashi or Austin Aries or Evan Bourne or Matt Sydal, whatever. All these guys, a plethora of guys, and you stand in there doing something ringside, putting something together, and they're stood in the ring putting their match together. And you're thinking, that's how, a veteran's not going to turn around to them and say, you shouldn't be doing that. It's Kurt Angle, like
I always invoke the holy Macho Man on this one, because there's the famous story, isn't there, of Macho Man versus Ricky Steamboat, WrestleMania 3, where Macho Man faxed the match plan, like, verbatim, this is what we're doing, to Steamboat, and made him memorize it before the show. If two guys at that level to do it, I mean, I've gone are the days of me typing up my matches in advance, but I certainly did at one point. I can't remember when, teenage years, I would go, well, what am I going to do this and change this? And it was a good way of embedding it in my head. I think
we all kept notes back in the academy. We all had notebooks, and if we did sequences, we'd all write. I wasn't a great one. I'm not, as you know, I'm not a great one for sequences, and I'm not a spot monkey. But I remember Josh, as in Kelly Six. I remember Josh and Rich and Jamie and all those guys. They would keep like little books, and then they'd be like, "Oh, what are we going to try?" And they'd go to their book and be like, "Oh, I've got an idea for something," and they'd go and read it through, and then come back and run it through with you. Like, it's an important part of growth and learning,
Yeah. Right. We should probably segue as we started talking about, the big guys and how they work. The big news coming out of WWE and AEW. I'm sure this will come as no surprise to anyone as we release this, that no spoilers here, but two big names have been signed to AEW. It's 100% confirmed now, as far as I believe. Massive news, really. But is it going to make all the difference? I don't know. What do you think?
The difference to what? Like, the difference to the people, probably. I was chatting about with a friend the other evening, and you got to think about, from my point of view, I'm thinking about this from Daniel Bryan's point of view. Like, you got two choices at this point, right? Like, you can either stay where it's safe and wind out your clock, right? Because I'm not having a go at the bloke, but he's had the lion's share of his career at this point, right? Not 80% of his career has happened, right? And it was phenomenal. And if you've got 80% of your career under your belt and it was phenomenal, and you worked the most, when you're the pioneer of some of the most indie-rific scenes out there, when you're the pioneer of ROH, and you had an incredible run in Japan, and you did some incredible things here in Britain in the early late 90s and early 2000s. You've worked everyone, you've done everything, and then you're sat on the bench watching the world pass you by in WWE for whatever reason, whether it's because creative hasn't got anything, or they want to protect you, or you're only going to get one match, it's going to be one big blowout a year. If you're that guy, you're sat there thinking, how many years have I got left, and what am I going to do with those years?
Yeah,
am I going to sit on my thumb and do fuck all, or do I take a risk? I'm guessing he's not taking a pay cut, because Nate Khan is handing out money like it's going out of fashion, and he's worth a few quid. So, but he's from what I've read, he can work Japan, he can work for other outfits, he gets to write his own run creatively, which I think is the thing that all of the guys. That's what Moxie and Jericho clearly are AEW for the same reason. Maybe not so much Moxie because he's not at the end of his career, but Jericho definitely. Jericho's like, I want to write my own story. Like, I'm going out on my Shield and I'm telling the story I want to tell on my Shield. Like, yeah, I think Daniel Bryan's is doing the same thing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on, and I think that from what I've read, the deciding factor really was that he wanted the freedom to go and work in Japan again. And I do think that is just, he, like you said, he wants to close out the way he wants to close out, and that means that he wants to work a few more shows in Japan, and if he wants to wrestle some guys he's not worked before and help them, build them up, then that's awesome.
He's got an itch, right? Something's clearly itching, and where he was won't let him scratch, and that's probably because the doctors. I know he's got the all clear, but obviously WWE, they protect their assets.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
you're a commodity. So the doctor says no, you're not doing it. Whereas you're in Japan and you're like, oh, I'll take, what is it? Oh, I'll take a burning hammer from whoever it is. There's no doctor standing there or a road agent saying you can't do that. Like, you're, you know, if you're in Kurikuin Hall and that's what you call, that's what you're doing. Like,
apparently the big heads at WWE are more salty about losing Daniel Bryan than they are about CM Punk signing. Apparently they've got that kind of, oh, we let him slip through the net feeling with Daniel Bryan, but they're not as bothered about CM Punk. Although they must be slightly bothered because apparently he's been 100% blackballed in terms of like his history won't be spoken about, I think, anymore.
You can't
but CM Punk,
you can't hold that. Like, that's only a 5-minute grudge because you can't, like, look at Benoit, for example. I know he'll never make the Hall of Fame and he shouldn't. Steve Austin did a really good. I watched a thing that Steve Austin said about Benoit, and if you haven't seen it, go and literally just look up on Google Steve Austin's response to the question about Benoit, and Steve Austin just sums it up in the most eloquent way I've ever heard it. Right, like, Benoit will never make the Hall of Fame, and the acts what he did can't wipe out his career, but it does mean that we have to remember him in a different way. Austin puts it much better, obviously. But like, we didn't talk about Benoit for years, but now we do.
yeah,
You know
I don't know.
mean? Like, you can't ignore these things forever. And it's not like, and CM Punk didn't kill it. I don't want to get all graphic and morbid here. CM Punk didn't kill his family, so all he's done is upset the bigwigs. So, and blackballing him now doesn't mean fuck all.
No, and you know, the proof is in the pudding. Look at Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man, two guys that were on Bret Hart that were on McMahon's kind of like no list, and all three of those have had their time, you know, to be recognised for their contributions. So CM Punk will certainly have his, I think. But I think also, for all the reasons that you just said, CM Punk.
Do we even care? Like, I'm sorry, but the thing about CM Punk was that it was very of the moment. It was very of the 2008 through 2011, right? That zeitgeist, what was going on. He didn't see it this way, which is why he left, right? He was very salty. But he had the product wrapped around him for a couple of years. Do you know what I mean? Like the Nexus, the movement. He had a very large chunk of the product wrapped around him, and it wasn't enough for him, right? And I think when he left, I think it wasn't just the bigwigs notice he put out a joint. I think he put most of the fans, and also the fans that were into him, it was 10 years ago. They've either grown up, they're not 18 or 19-year-old, like, little nutcase Punk. You know, like, the thing about Punk, right, is that, like, anyone who's going to attach themselves to a fringe movement, you're usually going to have a following of young teenage males, right? Who go through their formative years and in their mid-20s make changes. They have kids, they have jobs, they stop watching the things they liked as a teenager, or their taste in the things that they liked as a teenager develops and changes, right? So I don't think CM Punk is as big a deal, because I think the people that care, or cared in 2010, I don't think they care anymore.
I think it's still a huge coup for AEW, and I think it will spike the ratings. What I mean about will it make changes with these two is that the criticism is that it feels like Tony Khan is like a rich kid collecting toy figures. He seems to be, but like that. I think that was a direct quote from Vince Russo. I think said that.
But is that any different to what Bischoff and Ted Turner did?
Quite right. So yeah, there is an element of it. Just seems to be that he's buying up all these guys. I think it's serendipitous. I think it's just that these guys happen to be free agents. They approached at the right time. It all just kind of happened in one big cluster. But bringing in the kind of caliber of those two guys, and then mixing in, you know, we've still got to see Big Show do something physical yet. You know, they've signed these guys that are like, you know, in these background roles, and they're sort of sitting on them. Ready for them to kind of come out, but you know, we get.
But I can't see Show doing anything with Punk or Bryan's.
No, and I don't think he would need to. I think the thing with him would be something unique, different, like maybe him and Jungle Boy, you know, doing the David versus Goliath.
Do we know if Brian's going back to Danielson or not? Is he walking? Is WE holding on to branding, and is he going back to the American?
He must. I know they've mentioned him as the American Dragon.
Right.
So yeah, Brian Danielson might have to be the name, I guess, but who knows? Who knows? But yeah, they're both clearly attracted by the fact that they get, and CM Punk certainly must have been attracted by the fact he gets to do his own creative. Ego or not, I think that's.
Is it any different? Is it any different? We see this in cycles, right? We saw this in the late 90s when the Click moved, right? Someone with money gave them the opportunity to book their own shows, right? A fractious little group of people that were upsetting the bigwigs moved to somewhere where they could set their own creative, right? There was enough money, they had enough television that it gave them enough fame and enough celebrity and enough money, and it also gave them creative control. Go to 2005, 2006 with the Main Event Mafia, Kurt Angle, Big Papa Pump, Christian Cage, Tom Coe, the Dudley Boys, when they all went to TNA.
Yeah,
TNA had money, and TNA let them book the show.
and that was TNA.
I don't think this is anything new. This isn't anything new. This is not. People are like, oh, AEW are on the rise and they're a threat. Like WWE are always going to be there. Like WCW came and went. TNA, I know they're still kind of there, but they came and went on their bright moment. Like Vince recently said, they're nowhere near close to us. They're not, and I think he's right.
That period where certainly like when Angle and Christian Cage and those kind of guys came in, but you still had AJ, Samoa Joe in the mix as well, was like TNA's hottest period, where they were probably the most visible, in terms of like, a wider market, and it still didn't even come close. And you would argue that Kurt Angle was a star, way above.
Hotter than any no, maybe not hotter than Jericho, but hotter than when he went across, he was hot.
Yeah. So I don't think it's going to mean that AEW suddenly takes it to the WWE. I'd like to see them run up and, I'd like to see them nip at the heels a little bit and kind of create a sense in the WWE of like, all right, we better pull our socks up. We've got some competition now. Because I think genuinely when there is competition, the product for both parties is better. But I don't think AEW is anywhere near a threat to WWE. I don't think there ever will be.
Do you think, though, it's a bit like, you have, in Britain, it's almost like, to me, it's almost like you've got the early TV slot and the late TV slot. Like AEW is definitely much more mature and adult content. Like I'm a lot more comfortable sat watching 205 Live or Raw with my 5-year-old son, and I'm a lot less comfortable watching Double or Nothing or All In with him. And that's not an attack or nothing. It's just he won't enjoy it as much because it's a different sort of psychology. It's not as obvious. Orange Cassidy, for example, will not intrigue my 5-year-old. He won't understand why there's a skinny little dweeb with his hands in his pockets. He won't care. He won't. Like, do you mean it's not big enough? Whereas when he sees Big E, he thinks it's amazing. He jumps up and he headbutts me before we've even done it. Like, do you know what I mean? And that's the thing. WWE, they're doing, and especially with the PG-13 thing, when the fact that they're definitely marketed differently than they were in the 90s and 2000s. And I guess AEW were like, well, we like that kind of wrestling, and we want to do that kind of wrestling, and more power to them. And I'm actually quite excited, if I'm honest, because I had a bit of a debate with someone, and they were like, "Oh yeah, Daniel Bryan isn't going to draw money for AEW," and I'm like, "You're mad. You're mad. Like Bryan's versus Kenny Omega, that's got money written all over it. Bryan's versus Cassidy has money written all over it. Bryan's versus Adam Page, you know what I mean? There's not all those guys. That's marquee matches, right?
Yeah.
You then throw CM Punk into the mix.
Yeah.
It's money. Like it is. That is money. They're gonna draw. Like
you
can't not, right? Go to Chicago and put CM Punk on for the first time. When did he last wrestle? I'm not including when he got his head kicked in the UFC. When did he last wrestle?
It's got to be a decade. Yeah.
Go to Chicago. Doesn't matter what the venue is. They're going to fill it up, right?
Yeah.
They're going to fill it up.
Okay. Right. Well, who? Let's do this then. Let's finish off with like what you like, not what you predict, but like fantasy booking. What would you like to be the first big feud for Bryan and the first big feud for Punk at AEW? I've got a couple in mind. Shall I tell you mine first? While you think?
Go on. You, because obviously you've prepped this and you've dropped.
Oh no, I haven't prepped it at all. It's just it popped into my head just now. Well, I think Punk versus Cody is your first safe bet. It didn't really happen in the E. Cody is a different cat now altogether, in my opinion. I think it's the sense that the mentality is as you want the biggest name you've just signed against the biggest name that's associated with the brand.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see those two go. I think the creative around it could be. I think it could be clever. I think Punk could kind of attack Cody for the whole, what was the hammer on the throne thing about, bro, and why are you so anti-WWE? Like, I wonder if there's like a mental game there with CM Punk antagonizing Cody for being so aggressively, trying to take the fight to the Big E. I don't know how they do that, but there's something there, and certainly the match quality would be good as well. Daniel Bryan.
I'd like to see him in the mix up there with Kenny and Orange Cassidy and Pac and that lot. I'd like to see him in the mix there. I'd love to see him versus Hangman. Although
I think
something with Hangman would really work. But less from a wrestling point of view. I'm not sure what the story. I'm not sure what the story would be. But I think there's opportunities there for people like Punk and Bryan to really kind of lift some of that stuff that's going on there. Not that it really, although with some of those guys, they don't really need it lifting. It's already very elevated. So then, and that makes it hard to choose, right? And also makes it easier for them to slot in because it's not like they have to go there and elevate what's going on. It's already very elevated, and I think those two people will slot in quite naturally. I don't know. I actually have more worries about CM Punk slotting in just because 10 years is a long time to be away. Even if you stayed in shape. We just talked about this. Let's just circle back round to not using that muscle for 8 months, 10 months. And I know he's a professional. I know he's much better than you. He's forgotten more about wrestling than you and I have ever learned. I get that. But a decade's still a decade, bro.
But then there you go. There's another reinforcement for my reason of like having him against Cody. You want him in there with a safe hand who's not going to go a million miles an hour. And he's definitely going to be more interested in telling a good story.
You don't want him exposed, right? Whereas some of the younger lads might take fun in exposing him, right?
Or just out of inexperience and just being excited of like, oh, I'm working a big name, I'm going to get all my stuff in, and then
Punk and Omega could do some good stuff though. That would be a nice if they could work something frictious, something grindy against it. That could be quite good fun.
I think there's money in neither of them going near Omega straight away.
Sure.
I think actually I would like to have Daniel Bryan against someone like MJF.
Right.
Just a straight up heel for Daniel to be like, just a big baby face pop. Whereas I think Punk can play that kind of ambiguous toe the line tweener, but you want Daniel Bryan to be your red hot baby face, and you want him against a red hot heel. And MJF is the one that pops to my mind, and it's an easy one, isn't it? Because if Punk goes on and does his feud with Cody, and comes up looking trumps on that, and then Bryan comes up trumps on MJF. You could then have the three of them meet, as in Omega, Daniel Bryan, and Punk. There's money in having both of those singles matches, but it could even be that the triple threat springboards off into other things as well. Look, it's interesting to see.
Also, and there's so many people there, right? You got because we haven't even mentioned what Moxley or Jericho, and you've also got Hangman. You've got what's the really big unit? Fucking huge unit, but he moves like no one's business. Is it Cage?
Oh yeah. Is he still there?
I saw him at Double or Nothing, so
Oh, okay.
Yeah, an
Well,
incredible
that's
match
how
at Double or Nothing.
behind the product I am. But there's loads of guys that they could
Brian
work with.
Cage.
And
Brian Cage.
that's right, yeah.
Brian Cage. Yeah,
There's loads of guys, and we could go on forever. But we do need to wrap this episode up because I need
we've
to
gone we've gone to time almost as well. We were worried with the preamble that we weren't. We've gone to time.
We still will record some on the road stuff tomorrow, and we'll see. We'll either attach it to the end of this episode or we'll do it as a separate one altogether. So like, comment, subscribe, follow, all that stuff. You know where to find us by now.
Please, if you've stayed to the end, send us your feedback, send us questions, talk to us. We're on season 4. We're halfway through now. We're happy to talk, to talk to the people listening. Send us your questions. We'd be, we've said this in season 1. We've said this, right? We'd be delighted for you guys to engage with us and talk to us.
Man.
We always are. So, and thank you for the new subscribers. We're at 48. If you're listening to this, we get more than 48 listeners on average on this. So please, if you're still listening, please subscribe. Take the 10 seconds now to hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out.